So if you would like to show your beautiful faces today, we would certainly appreciate that. We have Anna from Acclaim Health today who will be our subject matter expert, and she would love to see everybody if you're comfortable. But please do keep in mind we are recording, and so if you are asking questions, you would be recorded today. You do have to, on the left hand side on the bottom, click that button for video. If you would like to stay with no video, please do what's possible for you. Anna, were those dogs making noise?
Yes. They made
Since we started, we knew it.
Already started. They made something fall and got scared and both ran away.
It is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So again, welcome everybody. I am Kate Holmes. I am the Director of Development with Townsend Smith Hospice Foundation. We are working really hard to bring palliative hospice end-of-life care to the community. We are here with a very important subject today, so we really appreciate all of you joining us. I'm also joined today from the board with Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Lilico, Secretary to the Board of Directors of Townsend Smith Hospice Foundation. Thank you, Kate and Sylvia Shalatsky of Droby Creative for producing this series, and Anna Nunes for your expertise. This is a really interesting topic, and we're interested, because hospice is so much about compassionate care, we're interested in hearing more about care for the caregiver.
Great. Yeah. So my name is Anna. I worked for Acclaim Health for 3 years, primarily in caregiving and providing education to caregivers. But I did merge my role into wellness care manager as well. So I'm kind of a merge of both. So prior to that, I did take care of my mom for 8 years. She had a plethora of comorbidities happening there, but dementia happened to be one of them. So I do appreciate and understand the journey of caregiving and what that brings to your life, both negative and positive. So we'll be talking about self-care and the idea of not being able to pour from an empty cup. So at the same time, I worked as a registered massage therapist while I was taking care of my mom, and it was incredibly challenging to balance that caregiver role, plus be able to provide for my family and contribute to the home. And prioritizing self-care really was a challenge. It would be on and off until I really kind of understood the importance of keeping that in balance. So, and taking responsibility for our own care, identifying barriers, and managing stress through effective coping strategies. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So I'm just going to. Oh, and now it's not working. Of course. Hold on, my friends. Technical difficulty. Okay, there we go. Okay. So Acclaim Health acknowledges from the lands of the Anishinaabe to the Ottawandaron and the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, the lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped with Indigenous history. We acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for being stewards of this territory. So Acclaim Health, who are we? Well, we're an amazing charity, registered charity and agency in Halton region. We've helped 19,000 plus people per year, over 85 years of serving Halton. We've got 500 staff and 650 volunteers and growing. We are funded by various funders, the government, the United Way, and private donations. It's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful not-for-profit agency that is really there for the people of our community. So a little bit about me. I live in Hamilton. This is my tribe, okay, so to speak. So I live in Hamilton. I have a 6-year-old son, my dog Athena. I have Arabella, who's our precious cat, and we have a hamster named Daisy. My hobby is as photography. I love to take pictures of flowers, and consequently, this is one of my self-care tactics, and what I use during my caregiving role, and it's just kind of continued on after all these years. So it's a real pleasure for me to engage in that. And you'll find me often at the Hamilton Beach watching the sunset and taking pictures. And I love the water. That's always been a great source of relaxation for me. So those are my things that I like to do. Yeah. And Hamilton's great for that because we've got a lot of waterfalls and amazing things. So I've added in here the impact of COVID-19 on the caregiver and some strategies that has been promoted by the World Health Organization. So let's just go through this. This has put, COVID-19 has really thrown a wrench into our normal daily lives. Plus, when you're a caregiver, that really does, really creates an imbalance of your life. And throughout this COVID experience, I was running the support group, and really the stress level, the fear, and all of these emotions at this unprecedented time really did show up. So we had to come together and as a group really identify what we could do to support each other and to manage the effects of this new unprecedented pandemic. So WHO, first of all, seek information from trusted sources. So that is your doctor, your government of Ontario, your community professionals. So be wary of information that comes from Facebook, Instagram. We cannot trust those sources. It has to come from the professionals in the community. And I believe that there was a rumor that had just spread recently. I don't know all the details, but it was misinformation. And that was spreading through Facebook. So be really mindful about that, because it causes undue stress when we're getting information from wrong sources, okay? Having a regular routine as much as possible. I mean, again, this really threw a wrench into our daily lives. Things that we were doing on a regular basis suddenly either stopped, full stop, or had to be incredibly modified. So it's important, if you have to modify those regular routines, to have done so. And things are opening up now, so people are starting to go back to the gym, starting to engage back into their regular routines. But at that really crucial point when this all happened, this was much more of a challenge, right? So you want to keep that up and keep connected. Preparing a contingency plan. Well, we should always have this anyway, but then when a pandemic happens, then we've got to look and reevaluate our plan to see if it still fits. It'll decrease your stress, expand your support circle, and you want to make sure that it's documented and the location of that information is somewhere where you can access, and either another person in your support circle can access that as well. The next one is staying connected and maintain social networks. That's a biggie. This is one thing I stressed with our support group, and that is to stay connected. No matter what you do, we're very privileged to have this online forum and, the telephone, whatever it is, but we are more connected now than ever before. So that was one of my main points, is to stay connected so that we reduce isolation. And it still continues. We're not out of the clear yet. People are still very, very isolated. And, Acclaim's job in our community support division and in healthcare is to really make sure we're still connecting and letting these people know that they're not alone. Okay. Let's see, finding opportunities to share positive stories and acknowledge those in your circle of care. Well, that's very much part and parcel with that staying connected. Support groups are a great way. And, we did have interesting talks. We laughed a lot, but we really did dissect what was happening to all of us. And there's just this camaraderie and safe space when you start connecting to other people. And being able to share stories, and somebody might say, oh wow, I didn't know that you felt that way. I feel that way too. So there's the connection making. Okay, attending to your own needs and feelings. Well, that's really the crux of this whole presentation, is that we want to normalize this situation as much as possible, gathering support and stories from other caregivers, because this is a collective trauma, what's happened with this pandemic. It really is a collective trauma. We've all suffered in different ways, but the point is to come together and move forward and move through this as easily as possible.
Anna, I haven't heard it referred to as a collective trauma, and I think that's a really great way of summing things up. So thank you for that, because I think that really hits home for me, because we really are experiencing this together but separately.
Exactly. And that's the takeaway of that point, is that we need to acknowledge that we're individually going through different traumas ourselves in relation to this, but it's also a collective trauma, and that helps to kind of adhere us together into a more healing mode, so to speak, right?
Yes.
And but again, it also really being connected to professionals, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like too. But so this is WHO's COVID impact on the caregiver. Really great strategies that will make a huge difference in your life, okay? So what is wellness exactly? Well, it's an active process of becoming aware of and making choices toward a healthy and fulfilling life. Wellness is more than being free from illness, because most of us are not exactly free from illness. It's a dynamic process of change and growth. WHO again states that it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So the key point here is that wellness is an active process, not passive. Making conscious choices to ensure our life is balanced despite the stress. It's ever changing and dynamic, so it's not a static process. True personal success banks on flowing and accepting change and inviting growth, versus being attached to an unhealthy story. So it's a very conscious, active process. Despite disease and personal life changes and stress, we still need to try and maintain a balance of mind, body, and spirit. Okay. So why does wellness matter? Well, when I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. It's all about.
And if I could just ask you to pause for one moment, just for that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's all about perspective, what you think you will become, taking responsibility for your own care. And really, it's a hard concept for our society, but it's me before you. That means that you're, keeping to your own doctor's appointments, that you're making time for yourself, to go for a coffee by the lake. These are really important, and we'll get more into that. But the tendency is to wait until we're ill to all of a sudden try and get better. So this is a very proactive, active way of looking at wellness and self-care. I'll just wait there. Okay, so there's 8 dimensions of wellness that have been identified, and of course, all these 8 dimensions do interrelate with one another equally, and we'll see a pie chart in a minute. It's equally vital in the pursuit of overall optimum health. You can reach an optimum level of wellness by understanding how to maintain and optimize each of the dimensions of wellness. I'll show you that wheel in a second. Perfect. So here is the beautiful wellness wheel. If you think about a car, it requires all of its parts to work and function properly. It needs to be evaluated every so often to make sure that things are running, and it has to be inspected. So it's the same kind of concept here. So in the middle here you are is your individual wellness. What does that mean to you? And then with these pie slices, this is what's been identified as the perfect wellness wheel. So if we start with spiritual, what does that mean to you? What are your beliefs, your values, your ethics? How do they guide your life? It's a good time to spend time exploring this because it does really relate to how you're going to function as a caregiver. I know that when I was caring for my mom, faith was an anchor for me. My spiritual beliefs were an anchor for me, that when things were getting really rocky, I could draw upon that faith. And it helped me to persevere. That was one thing. So that was a very strong piece of the pie for me, that spiritual component. When we move to, stop me anytime, Tim. When we move to emotional, staying emotionally healthy means to manage stress levels. Well, that's easy, right? It's not actually. It's really not, but it's doable. It's getting support from your family, your friends, and your community, professionals in the community, to prevent a snowball effect. If we ignore things, and you'll find that's a common thread in this presentation, the more we ignore what we're feeling, the more it becomes a snowball effect. And this is when we enter into more of a crisis mode. So the objective is to address situations and emotions as soon as possible. Moving into intellectual, this is important. It's really important to stay engaged in your own life and learning new things. We all of a sudden find ourselves in a caregiving role and then forget, oh, I still need to be who I am. I still need to stimulate my mind so that I can be a more effective caregiver. For myself, I had my book club every 6 to 8 weeks. We didn't talk about caring for my mom. It was strictly about the book and reading about it and just stimulating my brain and having these great conversations surrounding that piece of work. This is an important outlet, and so we're back in that little circle, that's you. Whatever is important for your intellectual well-being, you're going to keep and implement. And again, it becomes secondary. And this is where the caregiver burnout happens, when we are prioritizing ourselves as secondary rather than primary. The physical aspect, of course, exercise, nutrition, these also fall off the wagon because we, maybe tend to overeat or eat less, or we're not taking care of our skin, or we're not taking care of our bodies. And this really does have a huge impact on us, how we feel, our self-esteem, and just in general, keeping up with your own appointments. As a caregiver, you're consumed with the appointments of your loved one or the person you're caring for, that your own needs are not being met. So and again, that'll be a common thread. It's me before you. And I can't pour from that empty cup. It has to come from the overflow. Okay. Socially, this is really important. And this also really tends to fall to the wayside, is keeping connected to our friends and family. People will often say, well, my family and my friends, they just don't understand. And you know what? We have to give them a break. They don't understand. And how can we reframe our relationships so that they're still fulfilling and giving us support that we need, without putting on that expectations that they should know what it's like to take care of someone with dementia, the ins and outs. That's not realistic. So I know with my friends, I really made sure that it was about spending time with them and talking about different things rather than my mother. And I found that was, it kept it real. It was more realistic for me. And it gave me an outlet separate from my caregiving role. And that's really important. And in that sense, you maintain those friendships and relationships because there's no pressure for them to understand how you feel. Because this is where anger and resentment starts to build up, because you're like, you're not helping me. You don't understand. But they can't understand because they're not walking in your shoes, right? And again, this is where we really encourage people to go out into the community and find support groups and professionals that are educated and have experience in this realm. That way we can dissect what's really happening and strategize, and keep your friends as your friends. You also want to develop, and we'll talk about this more, is make sure you have a support system. So if you picture yourself in the middle of the wheel and you're drawing out spokes, okay, from each wheel, you're going to write down the names of the people that are in your circle of trust, essentially. Who can you depend on if something happens to you? Wills are important, all that stuff, but you also need a circle of trust wheel that you can put on the fridge if you're a very visual person, or keep it in your head. You talk with those people and say, hey, can I count on you if I need your help? Okay. That encompasses your professionals in the community that might be experts in the disease manifestation of the person you're caring for. It can be your spiritual advisor. It can be friends. It can be your neighbor. But who can you get access to? And interestingly enough, because of COVID, your wheel of circle of trust may have changed. And you have to now go back to those people and say, are you in a position that you can help me? Because sometimes they're no longer in that position. Maybe they're caring for someone else, or they're experiencing some trauma related to this pandemic. So it's important to kind of review your circle, every few months, or when there's a major life change that happens, similar to a will, right? And keep it somewhere where you can refer to it. I'm a very visual person, so I like to see that these are the people in my head, and it would make me feel better that I knew I could draw on those people. Environmental. This is interesting. When you become a caregiver, well, your house is one of the first things to go right down the tube. So you can't really take care of your home anymore because you're focusing on someone else. And when your external environment is disorganized, guess what? It reflects back into your internal environment. Similar, internal environment is disorganized, your external environment tends to become disorganized. So declutter, organize your papers, get all straightened out, and that actually does help with the role. Financial. This is really difficult because we live in a society where socioeconomic barriers exist. If you've got money for private care, then you can get extra help, which would reduce your caregiving responsibility, versus someone who might not have that money and they're just relying on the government to provide external care. So we need to live within our means and find other ways and means of accessing services that may not require more money. Okay. The other thing I want you to do, so based on this wheel again, you take out the corresponding colors. So it's a coloring exercise at home. Okay, and you can do this later. I won't ask you for homework. Okay. So what you would do is so if we're doing emotional, I I would take my coloring pencil, start at the bottom, and then I would shade in how much of that piece of pie I feel I'm doing well in, okay? You go off to the next one. For me, I think spiritual would really be like probably full. Financial, yeah, maybe, half of that. It's a visual way of telling yourself, oh, these areas are really in deficit. I need to focus to get this wheel into balance. Okay. If you're not a spiritual person, okay, that's maybe not so important to you. But, there's got to be some belief system in there, whatever it is. But try and balance. The goal is to balance the wheel. Okay. Perfect. So this would be, just a couple of, and I won't go too much into this one, but these are, because down the road I have the same kind of information, but here's just a few examples of self-care. And I want to mention one that's not here, and it kind of corresponds to moon gazing. And I always say to my kids, the one thing I hear is, I don't have time for meditation. I don't have time to go and exercise. I don't have time to do anything because I am constantly, but you know what? There is time. If you go outside at nighttime, or if you're in an apartment building, if you go to your window, look out the window for 1 minute every night, it actually has an accumulative effect to be watching the stars and to be in silence. You'll find that eventually you're out there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. So it's good. But if you don't have that time, all it takes is 1 minute per day, and it has a cumulative effect on your body. So you do have time. You just have to incorporate. It's a shifting in the way that we think. There's other ones here. Have a cup of tea. Definitely. Tea was one of my favorites. Light a candle. That warmth of that candle is so soothing. Take a nap, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Go into nature. We've got these forest bath kind of ideas. You don't have to get so, fancy about it, but just go for a little walk in your backyard or in your street. Journal your thoughts. I found that was important to kind of journal my thoughts and what was happening to my mom, so that I could be a better advocate for her. When I would go to the doctor, I'd say, here you go, you've got 10 minutes with me. And that would decrease my stress level, because I wasn't there saying, oh my gosh, I have to tell you about this and this and this and this. I had it on paper already, where I could give that to him. Okay. Let's see. Listen to music. That was a big one for me. Music is extremely healing. Whatever kind of music you like, that's a really amazing outlet for stress. So here we come to the effects of caregiving on health and well-being. Again, as I said, if you don't manage your wellness, you'll be forced into illness. If an area of that wellness wheel falls out of balance, this will most likely lead to caregiver stress, okay, and burnout. We don't want to reach that point of burnout, because to back that up is very difficult. So we want to be really mindful of what is happening to our bodies and our mind during this process. It's essentially staying on top of yourself will help prevention. So obviously burnout would be the opposite of the wellness wheel, right? Where we're really not managing any of the spokes of that wheel. Perhaps support wasn't sought early enough, because it really does take a village. And it's difficult for people who are very private and they don't want to reach out for help. But with caregiving, it's almost inevitable. You do need to seek access to community supports, and enlist the help of your neighbors and whatnot for your own health and well-being. Because really the effects of caregiving on mental wellness is incredible. And we saw that with the whole COVID pandemic, the mental health tsunami that came right after things were announced. So we need to be really mindful of that. So here are the common signs of caregiver burnout, and this was taken from WebMD, another great source. Doesn't replace your doctor, but it does give a really good idea of many different conditions. So full-blown case of caregiver burnout. So this would be the absolute opposite of the wellness wheel. You're really not balancing anything at this point. Withdrawing from friends and family. Okay, this is a biggie. Loss of interest in activities. All the things that you used to love to do have fallen to the wayside. Back to the friends and family, you're no longer reaching out to them, and that, or they're calling you and you're ignoring phone calls. Feeling blue, irritable, and hopeless, this is definitely a really big issue. If you're feeling this way, how can you possibly be in a position to fully care for the person you're caring for if you're not well to do that? Losing or gaining weight. Changes in your sleep patterns. You might sleep more or you might sleep much less. Insomnia is usually a big sign. Immunity, getting sick more often. That is definitely your body telling you, oh, you're not doing well. You're not fighting off what you should be because the stress level is just getting way too high. Wanting to hurt yourself or the other person. Danger. I mean, this has happened. People get to the point where they truly are done and they want to hurt themselves or their loved one. So, increasing alcohol or drug use, whether it's over the counter or other types of drugs, and feeling extremely isolated. So you can see how this is the absolute opposite. We enter into crisis mode at this point. Prevention. It's possible if we maintain our objective on self-care, me before you, prioritizing self-care, and reaching out for help. Even if you're, what I do get normally from caregivers is that, well, I'm an introvert and we're very private people. I don't want anybody in my home, because it can become a revolving door eventually. And unfortunately, to get the help that you need, it really becomes a process of acceptance and allowing the professionals and friends and family to really help and step up for you. So it's a little bit of a change of our thinking. So again, it's placing value, true value on the self on our journey to wellness. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. We have to take care of ourselves. It's crucial. That's our responsibility. Our responsibility is not for the doctor to care for us or not for our friends to care for us. It lies within us. Everything comes from the overflow. So make sure you're full, and any of the overflow, that's where your caregiving role can be accentuated and really be effective as possible. Self-care is not selfish. I think we're moving towards this where we're understanding that, no, we need to take care of ourselves first, me before you. The more you prioritize yourself, the more beneficial and effective you will be as a caregiver. It's just fact.
I think that's a really important point for us to take in, that it is not selfish. I really like that, and I think we should just take that in and say that to ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of societal and cultural pressure, right? It's like, oh, you have to give up everything to take care of your mom. You have to give up everything to take care of whoever it is. And yes, that's true. We're a community. But, someone talking? Okay, so once you do this, your role becomes more fulfilling and less burdensome. So now this burden doesn't become this giant boulder on your shoulder. You don't start to look at that person like, oh my goodness, I have to take care of you. This is too much for me. Well, we have to deflect and come back to ourselves. What am I not doing to effectively take care of this person and this situation. Again, you ask for yourself, what am I doing for myself? I am becoming stressed, things are out of balance. What am I doing for myself to offset these feelings that I'm having, essentially? So types of stress. So we've got, our positive stress, which is great. It's motivational, short term, feels super exciting, improves your performance. It's pleasant, vital for physical and mental fitness, and focuses energies and sharpens the mind. These positive stresses are, going to a job interview that you really, really want, upcoming party, a wedding, babies coming. These, you're running for a triathlon. These are positive types of stress. Now we move into the negative stress, which doesn't fade, but actually continues to build. Can lead to mental problems, of course, physical issues, loss of concentration, depression, anxiety. These are the biggies, anxiety and depression, and also take a toll on you physically with physical muscle aches and tension. So how can this be curbed? Well, relaxation is number one, and how do we do that? And positive self-talk. It's really understated how important it is what we say to ourselves. We may have grown up in a household where that wasn't promoted, it wasn't encouraged. So now we've got to switch it up and say to ourselves, I'm gonna make sure that I feel good about what I'm saying to myself. Healthy boundaries and lifestyle. Okay. And again, we're back to our wellness wheel and our circle of support. Once we get into this stage, like, how did we get to this part? Did we access those people? Have we reached out? Are we failing to listen to ourselves early on, right? And here we go. How can we curb stress? Reiki, anyone. This cat is just in heaven right now. Okay, so complementary therapies of relaxation, massage, Reiki, meditation, any of those things are helpful. You can do self-Reiki as well. Positive self-talk, and we'll get into some of those phrases that you'd want to say to yourself. A really good exercise is to look in the mirror and say, hey, you've got this. You're doing really well. You're, taking on this responsibility. You're strong. You're competent. You know what you're doing. Working with people with dementia, especially, they can get pretty, the verbal assaults can be pretty bad. And when they're telling you something, you start, as your caregiver, you begin to internalize what they're saying to you. And we have to remember that it is the disease. The brain is changing. And we cannot internalize that. We've got to find a way to look back and say, no, I am a good person. I am effective at my role. Have to offset things constantly. Healthy boundaries. Making sure that you're not over giving. Like, where are there areas in caregiving that you can delegate to other people to get that help? You're not superwoman or superman, even though we want to be that person, especially when it's in a spousal situation. You want to be that all for that person because you've made promises to them, way back when. But we have to acknowledge that we cannot operate in a silo. We're not on an island. It takes a village. And just maintaining a healthy lifestyle. These are really the four major aspects to curbing stress. And does it take a little bit of work? Of course, it does. I mean, it's not natural completely. Like, we have to work on these things. So time for self-assessment, and this is something that I encourage caregivers to do every single day. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel in the morning? And you might want to check in with yourself in the afternoon and then later on at nighttime. Are you feeling irritated, tired, hungry? Um, you know, so first is you need to recognize if there's an issue, right? We lose sight of our own well-being when we're focused on the care of another. I love the stress diathesis model. This is a way back concept. And really what it says is that we all have predispositions to certain conditions that may lie dormant in our bodies. When it's coupled with long-term exposure to stress, it is more likely that perhaps an autoimmune disease that is lying dormant will now start to show itself. And this has happened to many people. So we really need to understand the relationship between stress and our bodies and predisposition to certain illnesses. And if we manage that, we can mitigate that from happening or lessen the impact of whatever that illness is coming out. It's really difficult to manage, but we have to stay focused on ourselves first. Again, refer back to the wellness wheel. What is starting to get out of balance? I'm getting irritated. I'm getting angry. So what is out of balance? Again, COVID really threw a wrench in that. Everything was probably out of balance. And it was almost out of our control, and people are starting to get control back to be able to level out those areas. Okay. We don't often check in with ourselves, right? Like, we don't say, hey, how you doing, Anna? Are you okay? You know, like, this is something that we have to really ingrain in our brains and practice. So listening to your body, this is really important. If we really do listen to our body, we want to make stress a friend rather than an enemy. Listening and becoming mindful of our triggers, how our body responds, so that you can take immediate action before it snowballs, okay? And having that awareness really creates a space for self-compassion and action, okay? Where do you carry your attention? Are you a shoulder person? Do you get headaches? Do you get migraines? You know, this is my body helping me to rise to the challenge. Your body is your best friend. It tells you when things are out of whack, so to speak, right? And changing your mind about stress. Again, we can see it as our friend or our enemy. And if you see it as a friend, then you can say to yourself, okay, my body's telling me something. How am I going to correct this? Okay. And here's a little bit of a body scan. And you can do this on your own, like before bed or at different times of the day. You can sit quietly, you know, take a few inhalations and exhalations and just really zone in to your body, what your physical sensations. There's a whole bunch of them, but are you achy? Are you trembling? Are you cold? Are you numb? Emotional reactions you might pick up when you're in that kind of silent mode is, are you feeling joy or the opposite? Are you feeling sadness, fear, anger? It's just about identifying them, not becoming attached to that emotion in this exercise, but just to identify. And thoughts that may occur is, you know, reviewing the past, wishing, hoping, comparing. Comparison is the thief of joy, so we have to be really careful about that. Imagining another future. This happens a lot. Like, I wish my life was like this, and I wouldn't have to be caring for this person. I love them, but my life has just changed. Circular thinking. This is the hamster wheel. Are you on a hamster wheel, ruminating, or judging your experience? What are you thinking of other people? If, you know, Betty down the road seems like she's got the perfect caregiving role life. Well, we need the comparison story. You know, it's good to connect with other caregivers, and that's why we have support groups, is what are you doing to help, what's helping you to curb this stress that you're feeling? So it's really about not living in your own little silo, but reaching out and finding out what's helping other people. Okay. And journal when things change or start to appear, so you can include your doctor in that discussion as well, right? Doctor and pharmacist is your best friend. They know everything under anything about medication. So if your doctor is not clear, you need, especially as a caregiver, your pharmacist is one of your best friends. Always know what your people are taking. So here's the signs of stress, okay? It manifests in our body as headaches, muscle twitches, skin irritations, breathlessness, fatigue, emotions, fussy, irritable, anxiety, big one, and depression. Your behavior, maybe you're engaging in different behaviors that are not so healthy. Maybe you're shopping more, maybe you have insomnia, drinking more, smoking more, you're super restless. The mind, are you worried? Do you have brain fog? You're muddled, making quick, hasty decisions, and just engaging in negativity. So these are your signs, big signs in your body scan, okay? So here we come to the barriers for caregivers, which again can lead to excessive stress when we're not giving the proper support that we need. Basically, so a couple of the barriers are lack of support hands-on. So this could be that, you're not receiving enough personal support hours from the local health integrated network. You're just not getting that hands-on support that you need because you're no longer able to fully participate in your loved one's care. You might start to not feel recognized, and that's a very common. Nobody, I don't feel like people see what I'm doing. And that's really something that you're thinking, because the community does recognize what you're doing. And it's about having a good conversation of how to change that thinking. Lack of peer support. Well, there we go back to our circle of trust. Maybe you don't have the right people in your circle of trust. They're not actually able to provide that support that you need. Maybe you need to look at that again and say, okay, I've got to change a few people in order to make sure that I have support. Lack of stage appropriate information. If you don't know about the disease that your loved one or the person you're caring for has, that's going to make caregiving very difficult. It's really important to know about their disease or illness so that you can strategize, empathize, and get the help you need in order to understand it. So this is where we have professionals in the community that are educators and can help you navigate that disease and help to navigate the system. People who really know the healthcare system really well, because you may be told certain things in one institution and then it doesn't quite make sense in the community. So we are here, we're community partners. We're here to help decode all of those little things that are happening in hospitals and in the community, and all the red tape with the government and all of these things. So it's important to have that person in your back pocket so that you can contact them anytime to get the right information. Okay, and we have to be careful about getting information from our friends and other sources in the community. Where is this source coming from? Is it a reliable source that I can trust? Okay. Of course, we have cultural barriers, right? If your culture doesn't believe in reaching out to the community, the greater community, it's very kind of enclosed in their silo, that can pose an issue. And we try to support everyone. We try and engage in several different communities so that they know they don't have to operate alone, that we are there for them, and we will reach out to them in a way that they understand and is respectful. Okay. Socioeconomic barriers, again, goes back to, everyone has a basic level of care that they receive, but they may not have access to private care. So there's that divide, okay? Let's see. And there's so many community. So Acclaim Health obviously is, we're an agency. We're on the ground, basically. We're got lots of resources in the community. But if you can't access us, then there's the Caregiver Helpline. Very important. Very, very important line of service. So the doctor is usually your first line of service. Like, after the assessment, he'll make appropriate referrals, but actually sometimes it happens in the community first, and then we go back to the doctor. But this begins that web of help, okay? Going back to the barriers, like how likely are you to seek help? What are the reasons preventing you from seeking that help? And can you find a way around those barriers? Again, some of the barriers are made by us. And so we've got to reevaluate, if I'm going to get help, how can I change my way of thinking so that I remember when my mom, I was at one point, PSWs in and out, in and out, in and out. It was a revolving door. And this was very uncomfortable in the beginning. And that's often what we hear from caregivers. Eventually, I got used to it. Same thing with COVID. It was a real shock for us, all the changes that we experienced, but eventually we're now starting to acclimatize to this new way of life. So it is about acceptance, and everyone comes to that acceptance on their own time. But it's really about accessing community resources. You don't even, and this caregiver line is amazing because you just really call them and get some, information over the phone. So don't even have to have someone come out. Okay.
Anna, that's a really great resource for people that I hope a lot of people are now writing that down and going to use that. And
Yes.
I just want to mention what we're being very mindful of time today.
Yeah.
And I know that you have so much more presentation ahead of us.
Okay.
So is there any other kind of final points that you want to end on before we take it to questions?
Okay, let me just, okay, hold on.
You know
Okay,
what, Anna, we can come back and do this rest of the presentation at another point, but if there's just kind of a final loop that you want to close on, we committed to everybody for an hour. So I'm throwing you off. I'm completely throwing you off here.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, obviously the rest of it is really just tactics for coping strategies, which you can go online and type in like coping strategies for caregiver stress. It will populate all of these things.
And what we'll do, Anna, is we have your fantastic presentation and we will make sure this gets emailed out to everybody.
Yes. Yeah. I think
I can probably speak for you in saying that you're always available to help with questions.
Absolutely.
To you. I'm just going to put those words right in your mouth there.
You do that. I am here for you anytime. But yes, a lot of them are picture infographics, so you can it's very easy to read. I don't have to go through them. I pretty much have covered what the crux of all of this presentation was. The end.
Well, Anna, the end. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate that. If anybody has any questions, we've got a few minutes that we'll spend answering any questions from the group today. So type that in the chat box and we'll get that answered. But Anna, one of the things that I was thinking about through the presentation was you talked a lot about people's circle. Mm-hmm. And how important that was. And, somebody's circle may be quite small. And so how do you really look into expanding that, especially during COVID?
Yeah, it's a really, it's about opening your mind, first of all, of who you're going to allow, that you want to trust. Sometimes people don't have family that can help them. They don't have friends at all. So maybe your circle is literally just professionals. It's your doctor, it's the community worker. If you don't have a community worker, maybe you can have someone assigned to you so that you can count on them. So there's so many various agencies, and that's a conversation, with the doctor or a local agency, just to kind of give you that wraparound care. That's really what it's about. At Acclaim ourselves, we've got so many different layers that I can easily say, I see your dilemmas, and I can actually refer you internally to different support people. And then let's really talk about who's available and who's not. So yes, there are people who don't have a wide circle, and this is where we have to make the circle. And that's our job, is to help them to identify those people that will help them.
Excellent, Anna. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions coming in, so we will make, we do have a question. So Holly, over to you. I know your mic is off, so why don't you just go ahead and ask that question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Anna, that was a great presentation. I've really been thinking a lot about what you've said about prioritizing your own appointments. We all know this is really difficult because there's still only 24 hours in a day, and quite often when you have a lot of competing needs, it's difficult. I've been thinking too, you touched on comparisons, and this is something that we see a lot, especially with as much social media as we have in our lives.
Right.
That I mean, there are the extreme examples of all your friends who are in Italy, you know, and and you're not. But there are also just day-to-day events that it's sometimes hard for caregivers to keep up with with people, their friends in the outside world. Do you have any strategies that you'd like to talk about for that?
So just to keep connected, you mean, or not comparing?
Sort of figuring out, I guess, what your balance is, and how to make time without feeling like you're either abandoning the people you're looking after or abandoning your own aims.
Well, I think it's moderation, right? So you start off slow. So, you know, if it's just committing to a book club every 4 or 6 weeks, that's what you're looking forward to. That it's nothing major. It's not taking out of your daily routine, but it's something you can look forward to. In terms of a daily routine, just going back to, you know, that 1 minute cumulative effect meditation where you're outside in nature. Social media detox. Okay, so if things are, and it does bring up a lot of comparison, and a lot of it's a thief of joy, really it is. And it's almost about going on a detox, social media detox. I'm glad that my friend's in Italy, God bless her. Right now I'm not in Italy, I'm taking care of my mother and father. And you know, it's not fun. And so you have to block that out. Just say, that's great for you. This is not my life right now. But everything is temporary. Our caregiving roles are temporary. You know, good times are temporary, bad times are temporary. So we just have to ride the wave. I always tell my caregivers, ride the wave. You know, you have some really stressful peaks, but then it will come down. But it does take a little bit of effort, and making sure, again, that you're surrounding yourself with people that don't make you feel like you're not doing as well as them. And just, you know, limiting social media. Social media is great, but it's also everyone's doing it better. The highlight reels, everyone is doing it much better than you. And that's just simply not true. You have to honor what is happening in your own life. And if you need to take a break, take a break. And share less.
I think this too shall pass. That's a great way of looking at it, for sure.
Always say that. I always say that. This too shall pass. It really will. It's just a matter of time. Nothing is permanent. Nothing. So it's just about getting through it and moving forward. You know, there's a saying I love to say, a rolling stone gathers no moss. So you just keep rolling, keep it going, keep it going. And on your way, then you've got your people that you know, coming with you, that are key to making sure that you stay accountable and that you're on top of things. And also, you know, be gentle with yourself too. If you make mistakes, of course, or if you're not being the best caregiver today, that's okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be on point all the time. We're human, and it's unrealistic to think that we can be perfect caregivers. There's absolutely no such thing. Doesn't matter what's happening on Instagram. There's no such thing.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Anna, and thank you so much for all of your insights today. We will make sure that everybody gets this presentation, and so full of information. Really appreciate it. Thanks to the
Wonderful.
team. Thank you to the interpreter as well.
Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.